Hello everyone, my name is Frederick Lopez and you're on an all-new segment called Retro Review. It's not entirely like my other segment, Movie Review, and it's not like Hidden Gems. In this segment, I go over older movies that are very well popular but don't really go into the Final Cut category, Action Reaction, or any other segments I have on this channel. So I wanted to have another segment talking about classic films. In this first episode, I will go over Escape from New York from 1981, directed by John Carpenter. Here we go. Escape from New York came out in 1981. It stars Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, Lee Van Cleef as Hawk, Ernest Borgnine as Cabby, Donald Pleasance as the President of the United States, Isaac Hayes as the Duke, Harry Dean Stanton as Brain, Adrienne Barbeau as Maggie, and Tom Atkins as Remy. It is written by John Carpenter and Nick Castle. So, Escape from New York, it came out in 1981, but it's set in a dystopian future of 1997. Pretty much in 1988, in this film, crime rose to about 400% and desperate measures had to be taken. New York has become a prison state. The city of New York is a prison for inmates in the country. And we start with Snake Plissken. He tries to rob the Federal Reserve and he gets caught. So during this, he's basically detained and is in processing. During this, Air Force One, the president, is having a trip to have a great deal, and Air Force One gets shot down, lands in New York, so they get Snake Plissken to get the president out of New York. In order to make sure he complies, they end up injecting explosives in his system, so if he doesn't get the president back in a specific time limit, he's dead. So either way, he has to go to the prison city of New York. And in this, the whole movie is him on this mission to not only try to survive, but to rescue the President of the United States, who is trapped here, and the message he has to deliver to a special meeting at the UN. John Carpenter wrote this in the mid-70s after the wake of Watergate. Everybody was really distrustful of the government, and he wanted to write something about that. Two other influences where he visited the city of Manhattan, saw the more seedier parts of New York, and he also saw the film Death Wish, liked the tone of it, and wanted to make something around science fiction lines with Escape from New York. Studios at the time thought it was too dark. He had one movie that was a total bomb, and it wasn't until his successes of Assault on Precinct 13 and Halloween that he had a deal to make Escape from New York. The studio also wanted Charles Bronson and Tommy Lee Jones to play Snake Plissken. Charles Bronson would have been too old, and John Carpenter wanted to remain a director. He didn't want anybody else taking over his film, and he thought that, hey, maybe a less experienced actor would give him the chance to have his directorial vision come through without it being controlled in any way. So Kurt Russell before this mostly starred in Disney films and an Elvis Presley TV movie. And this is the first role he really did that was very adult after the Disney film, Snake Plissken. He also had the recommendation to have an eye patch, and so much has been taken from this movie, not only in action films, but just character-wise. And originally they were thinking of Clint Eastwood for Snake Plissken, but Kurt Russell based a lot of his performance off of Clint Eastwood. Overall, it's a very enjoyable movie with a great cast. It was like on about a $6 million to $7 million budget, and they make the film look so much bigger than it actually is. The Statue of Liberty, the only part that was filmed in New York was on Liberty Island, and it was the first film to be shot on Liberty Island. But they filmed everything else in St. Louis, Missouri, and pretty much they had a fire recently, and some neighborhoods and buildings were just kind of left there. They used that to their disposal, and they really made the film look much bigger than it actually was. They also used models, matte paintings, wire-taped buildings for the hologram sequences that really still stand up today, and some of the matte paintings were actually done by James Cameron. The film has a very epic scope, and it's a great B-movie, and that, I mean, like, it's a B-movie plot, but it treats it like an A movie. Everything about this, that's what I miss about the older B movies. It wasn't just like, hey, here it is, it's a low budget movie, let's treat it that way. No, they really treat the material with respect and really give you a great story despite the budget, and it makes it look more grand and bigger than it actually really is. I like the score by John Carpenter, such a fantastic, iconic synthesized score that Jamie Lee Curtis also gives an uncredited narration at the beginning. Overall, Snake Plissken is just one of those down-to-earth, just kind of cool characters. He's a badass. He's like the character that does not respect authority. He goes his own way, and the audience can really relate to that with Snake Plissken in this. There's a part where he's talking to Lee Van Cleef, and it's just like, it's your duty to do this. You need to do it for your country. For the president, he's like, I don't give a fuck about your president or your war. The way he says that, it really shows you that, hey, he is a good man. He did have some accomplishments, but the world and the system has just gone a crazy way, and he doesn't agree with it. So in this world, he's kind of like a person from the past stuck in this dystopian future. And we as audience members can relate to that, looking upon this world. Even though it is in 1997, it's 2017 now, there's still a lot of themes and messages and overall issues that are going on right now that we can relate to in this movie. I like the character of Brain. I like how he double-crosses Snake. I like Duke. Isaac Hayes as Duke is really good. Donald Pleasance as the president does a good job. I love the fight scenes. Everything about it, the models, Snake Plissken, the gunfire, the character of Cabby is really well done. And it's funny because everybody keeps saying to Snake Plissken, I thought you were dead. Kind of like in some of the old John Wayne westerns, but also each character that says that ends up dying later in the film. Overall, it's a solid John Carpenter film. If you're a fan of The Thing or Big Trouble in Little China, you'll like this. I actually heard about this movie, and I saw it on Fox Movie Channel one time, but I saw it a little bit later in my life. I saw Big Trouble in Little China, Starman, and John Carpenter's Vampires before I saw this, but this and Escape from LA are pretty good, but this one is such an iconic movie. This is really a film that is a definition of a cult film. It had a cult following afterwards, and it was actually quite successful. It made about like $25 million domestically in the U.S., which is not bad for its $6 to $7 million budget movie. Yeah, Adrienne Barbeau is in this as a role as well, and she was married to John Carpenter at the time, so she starred in this and The Fog. Kurt Russell is just a badass, kick butt, take names type of character, Snake Plissken. Very iconic. I like the choices he did in the voice, the appearance, and he said that this is one of his favorite films and probably his favorite role that he ever played, and I believe it. Escape from New York is a classic. So I give it an A and a 4.5 out of 5. If you've seen Escape from New York, most of you probably own it. If you have, you probably have seen it. If you have not seen Escape from New York, I highly recommend it. It is a classic film, especially if you're a fan of Kurt Russell, action sci-fi films, or John Carpenter. You owe it to yourself to check out Escape from New York. I like the use of the Panavision camera and then filming in St. Louis, Missouri. It gives it a very big feel, but also the Panavision camera, you get to see nighttime in a way you never did before in film. The capabilities were much further along when they made this, and I think it was a perfect time to make this, because before it would have been really, really dark or just different, where it kind of has a perfect atmosphere. It's very open, it's very empty. Something about it feels very lost and very dystopian. And it works for the sci-fi film, for the world it is set in. There's talks about a remake or a prequel, which I don't know about that. I personally hope they do not. They need to leave Escape from New York and Escape from LA alone, but this is a classic. So yeah, pros, John Carpenter and Nick Castle's writing, the direction, Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken. The rest of the actors do a fantastic job. I like Isaac Hayes as the Duke, as the villain. The score is fantastic, among one of John Carpenter's best scores. He never really lets you down on a score. And the cinematography and everything with the matte paintings, use of models, different things like that really, really elevate the film. Cons, I don't really have too many cons with it. Maybe some pacing issues here and there, but really, it's a very fast film, and if you're in the mood to watch it, it's a joy. So yeah, an A and a 4.5. I highly recommend Escape from New York. If you haven't seen it, check it out. If you have, let me know in the comments below, what did you think of Escape from New York, and what is your favorite moment from it? That's it for this first episode of Retro Review. If you liked the video, click the like button, comment, and subscribe for more videos.